Welcome to the Notion of Life series, in which we are creating the ultimate Notion system that helps you get more result with less effort. In the last video, we explored the Notion of Life Trinity, which are the main three components that power the Notion system. And these three components are databases, dashboards, and templates. In today's video, we are covering the circle of growth. Now, the circle of growth is a unique 6-step framework that is the foundational model that is underlying the Notion of Life system. And the main goal of this model is to bring into alignment who we are with what we do. And to illustrate the importance of this, I'd like to share a little story with you. Once upon a time, there was a wise father with 4 children, and this father was going to embark on a long journey. But before going on his journey, he gathered around his 4 children and he gave each of them a magical seed of grain. And he told them, in 1 year, I'm going to return and I'd love to see what each of you has done with this magical seed. So after the father leaves, the first child is thinking, I have this magical seed of grain. There's probably someone who's willing to pay some gold for this. So he finds a merchant, he sells him this magical seed of grain, and he has some gold in his pockets. The second child, so afraid to butcher this seed, decides to lock it in a box, puts a chain around it, and puts it away. And then when the father returns, he can show him that he took good care of this seed. The third child is a little smarter. He's thinking, if this is really a magical seed of grain, then I can plant this and have a huge harvest of grain. And that is what he does. He plants the seed, he waters the fields, he toils, he sweats, and at the end of the year, he has a field full with grain. The fourth child, however, takes an even different approach. He takes the grain and he looks at it, and he's thinking to himself, what makes this grain so special? What makes it so magical? He studies the properties of this grain. He puts some in the earth and he watches how it grows and then learns from that process and takes out some grain and experiments his way and really tries to understand this specific seed. And as he does that, he is growing fields upon fields upon fields of grain. So a year later, the father returns and he goes up to all of the children. And the first child says, I sold it for a bunch of gold. The father looks at him and says, short-term riches are always fleeting. It's much better to invest in something over the longer term. And then he asks the second child. And the second child grabs the box, opens it up, and shows the seed and says, look, Dad, I still have the seed, just like you left it. The father shakes his head lovingly and says, is hiding away potential really the way to grow? Perhaps the security that you feel is only an illusion. He then asks the third child, and the third child says, well, look, Dad, I grabbed the seed, I put it in the earth, and now look at these. This entire field that you see here all grew from this single seed. The father is beaming with pride. The kid understands that hard work, commitment, and dedication is what gets you results over the long term. Then he asks the fourth kid, what did you do with the seed? And he says, well, I studied it, I planted it, I experimented with it, and as the year progressed, my yields started getting better and better. And now look at this, Dad. Fields as far as the eye can see, all filled with beautiful grain. The dad has a tear to his eye, and he's thinking, this child of mine has really understood. He has understood that not only hard work is going to get us the result, but understanding the essence of what it is that we're doing, combined with this hard work. Understanding how this seed grows, understanding what it needs, and then giving it to it, that is where the real yield comes from. And this is true for our lives. In order to be really effective at what we do, we want to align our personal essence with the actions that we take. We want to align who we are with what we do. And that is exactly what the circle of growth does. It helps us get a better understanding of who we are, so we can then translate that into our actions. And then based on those actions, we can get a better understanding of who we are. And like that, we can keep getting closer and closer to our personal core. Now, this is not something that happens overnight. This is a lifelong project, something you have to do over and over and over again. But I promise you that if you apply this model over the long term, it will help you create your ideal life. You will get more results with less effort, but it takes time and patience. I've been applying this model for over a year now, and it has drastically improved the quality of my life, both socially, physically, spiritually, financially, on all these different domains of life. And that is because I get a better understanding. I now have a better understanding of what is important to me, which means that I can go out to get it. And it isn't perfect. I keep iterating, I keep learning more and more and more, but this model really helps me to do so. So before we continue with this video, I'd like to invite you to just pause for a moment and ask yourself the following question. When is the last time that you took that seed of potential that you have inside of you and inspected its essence? Ask yourself, what is making this seed grow and what can it grow into? I hope that question sparked some curiosity in you, some practical information before we are getting started. All the assets and resources mentioned in this video can be found in the description down below. Additionally, I like to be mindful of your time, which is why I added timestamps so that you can just skip through this video and find the parts that resonate with you. Additionally, you can speed up the playback speed if this is not fast enough. And of course, I'm going to give you a short summary up front in case you don't want to watch the entire thing. But of course, I do encourage you to do so. In short, we are going to explore the circle of growth, which is a framework that helps us bring into alignment who we are with what we do. It does this through 6 different phases. Phase 1 is insight, and this really relates to gaining insight into who we are, our core values, our principles, our ambitions. Based on this insight, we move into the second phase, which is planning, where we take this abstract feeling that we have and translate it into concrete actions. Then the third phase is structuring, where we structure all of our information flows so that we can actually execute on those plans efficiently and effectively. Which brings us to the fourth phase, which is execution, right? We created these plans, we structured our information flows, now it is time for action. Then the fifth phase is called the review phase. And in this phase, we check in with our systems, we check in with our processes to see if they are still functioning. And then the last phase is reflection, where we see if the actions that we took actually brought us closer to this person that we want to be, or maybe if this person that we want to be has changed, which of course leads to new insight, and like that the circle continues. It's also important to note that we can apply this circle on different timescales. I could do a very small loop through the circle. I could do it on a day-to-day basis, for example, but I can also do a very long loop through the circle, maybe a month or a year. And as we increase the size of the circle, the value that we get gets bigger. But we also have to be more patient before we see the result, right? If I'm doing this for my daily actions, for example, or daily reflections, the result is going to be much smaller than if I'm doing this for long-term goals and yearly reflections. So the circle is really a process, and we can apply it on all these different scales. And the last thing that we're going to cover is how the circle of growth optimizes our present reality, our here and now. Now, I'm not going to explain all of that right here. If you want to check that out, go to the last part of this video. That was the summary of the model. Now, let's go and take that deep dive. Let's start with phase number 1, insight. Gaining insight is a superpower that everyone has available to them, but most people will never realize this. In this chapter, we are going to explore how we can harness the superpower of insight to improve our lives. Now, remember that fourth child. The way he created so much abundance for himself and probably also for everyone in the neighborhood was by inspecting the essence of the seed. Insight means seeing things for what they truly are, seeing who we truly are and what our relationship to the world is. This includes things like our core values, right? What's important to us? Maybe I value freedom or compassion or discipline. It also includes our personal principles. How do we operate in this world? How do we navigate situations in a way that are beneficial to us? And lastly, it includes our personal purpose. What is it that we are here on this earth to do? Now, I realize that sounds very philosophical, but at the end of the day, we only have limited time and energy on this earth. And how we structure that time and energy determines the quality of our lives. Now, insight is not something that just comes to you. It's not that you meditate for 10 minutes and all of a sudden you know what your life purpose is. Rather, it's a lifelong journey. It is something that keeps going on, something that you keep developing. But I believe that if you continue to do this, you keep getting closer and closer and closer to what it is that you truly want. Now, maybe you'll never arrive at some endpoint, but you do get a better understanding and you will get more alignment in your life. Now, gaining insight is something that is largely neglected in our modern Western culture. We are very focused on the external world, and there's a lot of value to be gained in the external world, but we forget that there's also an internal world, and we need to match those two things together to really create value. And I get it. I realize that for many people, gaining insight seems like a waste of time and effort. Why would I bother looking inward if I could be doing all these things in the external world? And I think the main reason that people find this so unattractive is because the feedback loop from gaining insight is very long. If I learn something new today, it might take weeks or months or even years before I see the results. And we want the quick fix. We want to know that what I'm doing right now is getting me result. I want the result now as fast as possible. And that is not how insight works. It's a long-term process. It takes time. But in that long term, it also creates so much value. But we need to have that patience. We need to spend time with it and uncover what it is that we want over time. And then as we get closer to this core, you will find that you start getting more motivation and more energy because they are contributing to your life purpose. Like Nietzsche once said, he who has a why to live can bear almost any how. So spend some time trying to figure out that why. So, short recap, gaining insight is a superpower and is one of the most valuable things that we can do. It means to see things for what they truly are. And as we start seeing who we truly are, we find deep sources of motivation and energy and create true abundance. Which brings us to the second phase, planning. I really like this quote that a goal without a plan is just a wish. And if we want to turn our wishes into reality, we need a solid plan to do so, right? Even if this child has figured out all the magical properties of the seed and figured out exactly how to make it grow into the lushest fields of grain we've ever seen, he still needs a plan to execute it. And so do we. If we've learned who we truly are and we want to manifest that into the world, we need a practical roadmap to do so. And that is all a planning is. It basically outlines all the actions that we need to take to get to a desired outcome. It helps us translate something that is abstract and non-tangible and turn it into something concrete and tangible. Or to put it in simpler terms, it helps us take our why and translate it into the how and the what. So how do we do this inside a notion of life? We start by exploring our core values and principles, right? The insight part. Then based on those values, we set long-term vision goals. And these are abstract goals that we might have for 5 or even 10 years from now. Then based on these abstract and long-term vision goals, we start reverse engineering until we get smaller, smart goals. These are goals that we can actually achieve. These are tangible and concrete goals. Then based on those goals, we are creating projects, which are workspaces that function as the engine for reaching these goals. And then within these projects, we break everything down into actions that we can take right here, right now. In this chain, projects are the odd one out because they're not necessarily something that we do, but rather they are a vehicle that help us to do things. They bring together things that we need to execute efficiently and effectively. Now, the last thing to note here is that the actions that we end up with can be subdivided in 2 categories. Either actions that we repeat on a consistent basis, which we would call habits, or actions that are unique, which we would call action items or to-dos. Quick recap, we need a plan in order to manifest our authentic selves in the world. And a plan is nothing more than a set of actions that helps us reach a desired outcome. It helps us translate our why into the how and what. And we do this by starting with our insights, translating those into vision goals, reverse engineering those into SMART goals, projects, and then down to actions and habits. Which brings us to the structuring phase, also known as the knowledge phase. We live in an age of unlimited information, and how we handle this information determines whether we can surf the waves of abundance or drown in the overload. And that is why we have the structuring phase, to help us guide this overflow in an optimal way to reach our goals. Let's go back to the example of a farmer. What was the main difference between someone who was farming 10,000 years ago and today? On a biological level, we were all human beings, right? We didn't change that much over the last 10,000 years. Yet a farmer in the 21st century is infinitely more productive than a farmer 10,000 years ago. The key differentiator? Information. The farmer nowadays has much better information, much better knowledge, much better tools to his disposal, making him so much more productive. And this is what we do really well as human beings. We take information and we use that to create value. Information and knowledge are our most important resources. Now, I think that information is all the data that lives outside of ourselves, and knowledge is all the data that lives inside of ourselves. So knowledge, in a sense, is the information that we have embodied. Now, for simplicity's sake, within the notion of life, I refer to both knowledge and information just as knowledge. So whenever you read knowledge somewhere, you can think, okay, this is both knowledge and information. Now, due to the overload of knowledge in this world, it becomes ever more important that we curate our knowledge, because as information quantity increases, so does the variance. And that means that we both have higher highs, but we also have lower lows. To put it simply, there is much more high quality information available to us than ever before. But there is also much more bullshit. And our jobs is to parse the gems from the bullshit. We want to extract what is valuable and discard all the rest, right? We want to separate the noise from the signal. And the noise is nice, it's a really good noise, but the signal is shittier and more encompassing than ever before. Improving the quality of our knowledge is improving the quality of our lives. It is improving how effective and efficient we can operate in this world. Now, within the notion of life, we make a distinction between two knowledge classes. The first one is external knowledge, and this is all the information that other people have generated. Think podcasts, books, articles, you name it. The other category is personal knowledge, and this is all the knowledge that we have generated, our ideas, our brainstorms, notes we might have taken during a course. So these are the two different classes that we make a distinction between: external knowledge and personal knowledge. So, quick recap. Information and knowledge are some of our most valuable resources, and as the quantity of knowledge is increasing, so is the variance, making it important for us to curate our own knowledge, to retrieve the gems from the shit. And then lastly, within a notion of life, we make that distinction between external knowledge and personal knowledge. Which brings us to the execution phase. Now, there's not much to teach you in this phase. This one's all on you. This one is where you move into action. Even if that fourth child had the best possible seed, the best possible plan, the best possible tools available to him, he still needs to take action. He needs to start moving and get things done. Now, the future and the past are valuable concepts. They can help us understand ourselves and our place in the world. But at the end of the day, that is all they are. Concepts. The only thing that is real is the present moment, is the fact that we are right here, right now. In each moment, life is posing us a question, and our actions are how we respond. Now, throughout the circle of growth, we try to get a better understanding of what question life is asking from us and how to formulate the proper response. But we still need to respond. We need to take action. Like the legendary philosopher Lao Tzu once said, the journey of 1,000 miles starts with a single step. Take that step. So, quick recap, no matter how good our plans are, how aligned everything is, we still need to execute. So let's get some. Quick break. If this video is valuable to you and you want to support me, then please subscribe and like down below. It really does help. Thank you very much. That brings us to the review phase. In order for our systems to keep running smoothly, we need to periodically check in with them and update them. And as we do that, we can really have that trust, really have that confidence that the systems will keep working and get us to the place where we want to go. When that fourth child planted the seed and turned it into this bountiful crops, there was a whole process in between, and during that process, he needed to check in if everything was still working. If his horse was still fed, if the plow was still strong, if the bugs weren't eating his crops, he needed to check in with his process. In brief, a system is a structured process that takes an input and turns it into a desired output. Now, the main challenge for any system is that it needs maintenance. A car needs to be oiled, a plant needs to be watered, and a human needs to be fed. A notion of life is a system. It's a complex system, it has many different variables, but it is a system. So it also needs maintenance. And that is why we have the review phase. A notion of life features a set of different review cycles that help us check in with different parts of the system. And a review is really just a checklist that helps us go through a process in a structured way. And we have different spaced review cycles based on their feedback loop. Now, a feedback loop basically means how long does it take to see results from the actions that I'm taking. So if I take this action right now, how long does it take before I see the result? Is that a day, a week, a month? And the longer that this feedback loop is, the less frequently that we review it. So within the notion of life system, we have the following reviews. We have the daily one, in which we check in with our action items, our active habits, and our low-level information sources. Then we have the weekly one, in which we check in with our projects and our medium-level information sources. Then we have our monthly one, during which we check in with our SMART goals and our high-level information flows. We have our quarterly review, during which we check in with our vision goals and with our different life areas. And then we have the yearly review, which is really the most powerful review cycle that we have, during which we check in with our core insights and our peak information flows. And the yearly review is really where everything comes together and we can really see the patterns of our lives. I've now done 2 yearly reviews using a notion of life, and they have been absolute game changers. So, quick recap, we use review cycles to keep our system running smoothly. We space them over different time spans according to their feedback loops, and we have the daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, and yearly review cycles, which are all layered on top of each other. Which brings us to the final phase, which is reflection. Reflecting on what we've done and our current state of being is the fuel for gaining new insight. And it's an underrated but fundamental step if we want to be successful. Because success is not just getting some outside metric. Success is living the life that you want to live. And in order to understand that, you need to know what it is that you want. So, if we tie this back to the child with his fields of grain, reflection is the step where he looks back and thinks, okay, I've tried all these different things. I've experimented with all these methods. Did it get me the result that I wanted? Or do I need to change things? Are there things that I need to do differently? He's reflecting on the process and seeing if it's actually bringing him closer to the desired outcome. And then based on those reflections, he gains new insights on how to do the next batch. And that is exactly what we want to do, right? We took our insight, we created plans, we took this action, and now the question is, did that action actually bring us closer to the person that we want to be? And additionally, do we still want to be that same person, or did we also gain new insights as this process was unfolding? So, in essence, reflection is an inquiry we make into our own thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. It's an inspection that we make into our internal world. Now, there are 2 different categories within a notion of life. The first one is reflecting on things that we planned beforehand. This is the question of, did the things that we do actually get us closer to the person that we wanted to be? The second one is reflecting on our general experience. These are not things we planned inside the system or planned inside the circle of growth, but just things that happen, right? Life just unfolds. We learn new things about ourselves. We have these new experiences that aren't planned, and we still want to reflect on those because they can also inform us with new insights on who we are. So just like we had the future flow of translating insights into planning, into execution, we also have the feedback flow, which is where we take our execution, reflect on it, and turn it into new insight. Similar to with the review cycle, the shorter term your reflection is, the shallower the insight, and the longer term reflections are giving us those really deep insight. So the daily reflection will most likely give you a very tiny insight, where a yearly reflection can give you those foundational shifts. And as we're layering these levels of reflection, over time, we start discovering our personal purpose. But here's a little secret. There is no final endpoint. There is no point where we arrive at where we've found our purpose. We're continuously discovering new things. And even though we get closer to our essence, it is a process that goes on as long as you are living. And that is the beauty of things. As human beings, we get to create our own meaning. We get to redefine and rediscover what is meaningful to us. And the circle of growth helps us to do this. It helps us get a better understanding of who we are and how we can manifest that into the world. And that process just keeps on going and keeps on going, which is why it's a circle. Quick recap. Reflection helps us gain new insights, and we can either reflect on actions that we planned beforehand or on our general experience. And the longer term the reflections are, the deeper the insights that we are going to get. But we will never find a final answer. It's a circle and it keeps going. Which brings us to the final chapter, how the circle of growth optimizes present reality. We had a look at these 6 different phases. Now, let's take a look at this image of the circle of growth. And what you see here is how the circle of growth balances 2 different axes. One of them is time and the other one is reality. So let's start with time. If we were to draw a line straight through the middle, that is everything that is happening in the present. In the present, we align our insight with our execution. We align who we are with what we do. Now, to move from insight to execution, we go into the future. We plan into the future. We create systems and structures in the future so that when the time comes, we can execute. Then on the other side, we move into the past. We check in if all the structures that we created in the past are still up to date, and then we reflect on the actions that we took and use that to get new insight. So like that, we use the future and use the past to inform the present. Then if we would draw a line on the other axis, we have the internal and the external. So the internal is everything that's happening to us, that is related to us. So let's start over here with reflection. When we are reflecting on our actions and behavior, that is something that's happening inside of us, that's related to us. We then use that to gain insight. Once again, insight is a very personal thing. And then from that insight, we create plans on how we want to move, what we want to do. On the other side, we then move into the external world. We structure the external world to be able to execute efficiently and effectively on our plans. And then we execute. Execution happens in the external world, right? We take our internal thing and manifest it into the external world. And then over here, we review if the systems and processes that we are using in this external world are still up to date. And like that, by using the circle of growth, we optimize our present reality. We use the future and the past to inform the present. We use the external and the internal to create a full reality. And then in the here and now, in the only thing that is real and that will ever be real, that is where we live. That is the thing that we want to optimize for ourselves. Okay, so now that we've covered all that, I would love to know, what do you think that your seed of potential is? Let me know in the comments down below. If you want to use the Notion of Life system right here, right now, then I have good news for you because enrollment is currently open. You can use the link in the description to sign up now and get a 20% early bird discount. Additionally, I have created a scholarship program because I don't want money to be the reason people cannot get access to my material. If you cannot afford the product at its current price, send me an email and we'll arrange something. Now, as mentioned at the beginning of this video, all the products and assets are linked in the description down below. In the next video, we are finally going to explore the actual system, starting with the action tracker. If you want to follow this series from the first episode, then use the playlist that I've created. I want to thank you for watching, and remember, the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is today. So go and plant that tree.